All right, everyone. It is 9 p.m. Eastern Time in the United States. It's Wednesday, so you know what that means. It means it is time for Unfound Live with yours truly. Hope everybody is doing well out there. Let me change my lighting a little bit here. Going to go blind. And let's see who everybody is... Let's see what we got going on tonight. Spicy was first. Valerie, Louise, Karen. I have a question from Karen tonight. Linda, she says she can't believe she made it on time. Either can I. I can't believe I made it on time, Linda. Fishing is ready to get back to crappie fishing. The great weather in South Bama this week. Okay. Nina, she always reminds me how to say her name. Thank you, Nina. And like to fall asleep listening to me. Well, that's not good. Susan and Suzanne and Screaming, Kathy, Jasmine. Hello, Cherie. All right. We're getting the show started tonight. I got a long agenda. It's been a long day. It's kind of even been a long week, starting, I guess, this past weekend. Hope I don't yawn too much during the show. I think that's kind of like a psychosomatic thing or something. Hello, Laura. But got a lot to talk about tonight. I want to remind you, as you are watching tonight's live show, please give this live show the thumbs up. That helps us with the YouTube algorithms. And if you are not yet a subscriber to the Unfound Podcast Channel, I hope you will do that. Consider doing that while you are watching this evening. Beauty, hello, Beauty. Melissa, watching me on the big TV. RS says Red Bull. Really don't do that type of stuff, RS. Never got into it. All those energy drinks and all that. Don't do that stuff. Linda says, should we count the yawns? No, let's not do that. In fact, I'll hide them behind the microphone so you can't see them. It's just been a long week. Had a lot to get done today. Got Friday's episode done, and then I drove an hour to play some doubles. It's not supposed to be an hour drive, but it ended up being an hour drive up to Oldsmar, Florida to play a little doubles. And then I drove the whole way back here, took a shower, shaved, and got ready for the show tonight. Unfortunately for the doubles up there at Oldsmar, they're moving the time back to 5 o'clock next week, which will not make it. I won't be able to go up there to play anymore because of this live show. Hey, work comes first. So that's just the way things go. So I felt motivated to show up this evening today because I'm not going to be able to show up for the foreseeable future as long as they push it back to 5 o'clock, whereas they have been playing at 4 o'clock. The reason they're moving it back to 5 o'clock is because we changed the clocks this weekend. Beauty says 73 today in Kentucky. Wow. Hello, Twinkle. And I'm going to be talking about Twinkle here in a second. But yeah, this past weekend, I played at a tournament called Throw Down the Mountain up there in Brooksville. Drove back and forth both days for it. I finished 21st out of 94 players. Was hoping to do a little better than that. I wasn't exactly hoping to win out of 94 players, but was hoping maybe for like a top 15 and just one or two strokes here and there, some mistakes and some things, but really not too disappointed. But like I said, my expectations were a little higher than that. Played well, and then I just had a couple, 2 or 3 bad baskets per round. But it's a unique tournament. It's on private land. The course is only open for a month every year, and so it's very popular, very busy. It had rained before we played on Saturday, so going up and down those hills was a little treacherous. But we got it done. I finished the tournament strong. I birdied the last 3 baskets of the tournament. So that was good. I was pretty pumped up about that. Hello, Delane. Hello, Kathy. Saying hello to Twinkle and Delane. So speaking of disc golf, this date, March 10th, is a big date in my disc golf career. In fact, it was a year ago that up at that course, not in an actual tournament, but in practice, I had aced a hole-in-one, I guess you would say, in practice, one of the baskets up there. And it's downhill. It's 427 feet downhill from up here down and to the right. And I aced it. That was a year ago today when it came up on my memories on Facebook because I had posted some pictures of it. I have the disc. As soon as I came off the course, that disc was not thrown ever again. In fact, I have it propped up in my condo right now. It has not been thrown once since that practice throw back a year ago. And it was a big deal for me. And I only have 2 aces in my entire career. And that was the second one. I had to wait 7 years for it, but it was well worth it. And it's just standing up there. Could have never expected that I would do that. And I didn't even see the disc go in the basket. There were people down there that saw it go in. You can't even hear it. It's so far away, you can't even hear the chains rattle when the disc hits them. That's how far away it is. And somehow I did that. It's crazy. So that was a year ago today. And any of you who are Facebook friends with me know that I posted that a year ago. And then I posted the memory of that today. Once again, I want to remind you, I know a lot of people are tuning in here in the last couple minutes. Please remember to hit the like button for this video as you are watching tonight on whatever device you are using. Also, if you'd like to contribute to the program, you can see down at the bottom of your screen the gray square with the $sign in the middle, and that is the Super Chat button. And you can contribute to the program if you think that we are worth it. It's kind of like PayPal or Patreon. And if you'd like to contribute to the program monetarily while you're watching tonight, please do so. This coming weekend, I'm going to be going down to Sarasota for just one round. So I tee off, I think, at 1:10. So I'll get down there about 12:15, which means I'll have to leave here around 11. I'm just glad I don't have to get up early. And I'll be driving down there, just a one-round tournament in Sarasota, and the proceeds of it will be going to toward marketing or bringing awareness to disc golf on the continent of Africa. And so they're having this fundraiser down in Arizona or in Sarasota, and I'm going to be taking part in that on Saturday. This tournament is one round to raise money for that. And they're going to be doing that again in April up here at my local course in Clearwater, Cliff Stevens, and I'll be taking part in it there as well. So I'm excited about that. I'm a big believer in disc golf for children, spreading the word. I think it's a great sport. I think it's a great way to get outside and do something constructive and athletic. And so anytime I can do something to support that, I'm going to do it. As you know, although I've not brought it up recently, but when it happened maybe a month ago, longer than that, I am a sponsor for the women's tournament that's going to be held here locally in May. I'm one of a few sponsors of it. So I'm a big believer, of course, in women, especially getting into disc golf too. So that'll be May 8th is when that tournament is, and I'm a sponsor for that. So I got one round this weekend, and then so a week and a half from now, I'll be going back up to Brooksville again for another tournament on the same course, but I'll be playing in a much, 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 much more difficult division. The course will be longer, etc. I probably am going to get my butt kicked, but you just never know. So got a lot of disc golf stuff coming up. As usual, I like to always talk about that when I start these live shows. Let's see. Kathy says aces are very hard to achieve in both types of golf. Kathy, much harder in ball golf, but they're much easier to get, I would say, in disc golf. Of course, it depends on the course and everything else, but I would say they're more common in disc golf, but I don't think either are easy. A Twinkle says, "Where is our little Eileen? I don't know where come on Eileen is. I don't see her in here yet." Beauty says, "Ed, you and the Unfound team are more than worth it. Your team rocks." Thank you, Beauty. Thank you. Screaming says, "I live like 3 blocks from one of the best disc golf courses here in Minnesota. I should get back into it. I haven't played since I was in my early 20s. Screaming, you should get back into it, especially if one of the courses is that close in Minnesota. I'd love to know what course it is if you can tell us." In other news, there was a funny story from what day must it have been? It must have been Monday, that there's a light right outside. My front door is like right there. And there's a window right here. I can look up onto the landing where the elevators are. Well, there is a light right outside my door that comes on a timer of some type. It's not on during the day. It only comes on at night. And it started to flicker, like it was going bad. And so on Monday morning, I went down and told the building manager, who I kind of know. I run into her once in a while. And I went in there, knocked on the door, and I told her that this light was blinking, and maybe they want to get it replaced. And then we talked about the elevators, because one of the elevators was down again. They just put new elevators in here last year, and one of them was down. And here, somebody up on the 15th floor, they were moving something out of the elevator and knocked one of the doors off its track. How do you do that? And they just left it that way. So one of the elevators was down, I think, for at least a day this past weekend. So we talked about that. And then just in passing, I mentioned, I said, I don't know if you know what I do, but I host this program called Unfound, and I happened to be wearing my Unfound hat when I was talking to her. So I pointed to it, and I report on, I investigate, research missing persons cases, and I have loved ones, parents, etc. on the program. And you know what she says to me? She says to me, "Oh, I know." Now, keep in mind, I've lived in this building almost 2 years now, and she and I have talked about a lot of different things. The program has never come up, ever. And, but for the first time, I said to her, "I don't know if you know what I do." And I knew I happened to be wearing the hat, and I thought, well, this was probably a good time to bring it up as any. And as soon as I said that, she goes, "Oh, no, I know what you do." She said, "You and Lenore and I have been talking about you." And Lenore is the real estate agent who I worked with to rent this condo in this building. And then this other woman is the building manager. And it must have been, what happened was that Lenore knew what I do. I probably know Lenore much better. But she knows that I host Unfound. And they must have been talking, and she must have told the building manager. And so it was just kind of funny that here I was bringing up the program, and here she already knew about the program. And in fact, she is a subscriber to the podcast on top of that. It just kind of came up in that conversation. And it was, I know that people find out about the program in a variety of different ways. And most of the time, I'm, of course, not aware of it. So when somebody does say, "Oh, yeah, I found out about your program through somebody else," and the person never brought it up. It's still to this day, even though the program's 4.5 years old, it continues to surprise me, even though the program is at least a little popular. And we do have almost 12,000 subscribers on YouTube, which isn't many compared to a lot of channels out there, but still, I can tell you that it still amazes me when, somebody says, oh, I know who you are. I know what you do. Yeah. Oh yeah. It's very interesting. And I'm a subscriber to your show. It's just like, well, isn't that very nice? And so I really thanked her. And that was pretty cool. I just did not expect that. I thought it was going to go, oh, Ed, is that what you do? I had no idea. Well, I'll check it out. She already knew. And so that was pretty cool. So that was an interesting, funny conversation. And she's very cool. I've gotten along with her since the day I moved in here. I don't see her all the time because I really have no reason to talk to her unless there's something going on, like I said, with this light, the elevators, whatever. But I suppose in her position, all she gets is bad news. But it was just very funny. So we had a good, I had a good, made me feel really good that she told me that. What's going on here? Elizabeth, hello, Ed. I never heard of disc golf before you. Now I want to play. Well, you should play. Kaposa, South Street, South St. Paul. Never heard of that, screaming. Coffee says, oh, she wants coffee, maybe a man. Do you think that sometimes people walk away from their life and need another identity, and that is the reason for some of the identity theft we are seeing? I don't think about it that deeply, Coffee. I think that people, if they want to leave their lives, just do so. Now it may be, for example, in Joshua Guimon's disappearance that we recovered a couple weeks ago, that it seems he was already in the business of fake IDs. So maybe in a situation like that, if he decided to walk away from his life, he already had the means to create some sort of fake ID. I don't know what the quality was, but maybe something like that. But otherwise, Coffee, I don't think that all, the identity theft that we hear about going on today has anything to do with missing persons cases. I just don't. I think those are two separate things pretty much. Linda says, good. I'm not the only person who doesn't know what disc golf is. That's fine, Linda. Just look it up here on YouTube. Indy says, hello, everyone. Haven't been able to tune in for a while. Well, that makes me sad, Indy, but I'm happy that you're in tonight. Thank you, Susan, for the nice words. Thank you. Sheree says, and last week, my boss put up the podcast in my evaluation. Now, that is something of course, Sheree had told me about that. Now she's telling all of you. And that is pretty funny, Sheree. That's a good one. Hello, Joyce. Good to see you, Delane. Yeah, it is what Twinkle. It was a cool conversation. I didn't expect it. And sometimes those conversations that make you feel good that you're not expecting can be some of the coolest ones you ever have. That's certainly true. Hello, Marlene. Good evening. Just came on watching highlights of the players at Sawgrass. Well, they're not playing yet, Marlene. They start tomorrow. I may get to watch a little bit of that, hopefully. Hello, there's Eileen. Come on, Eileen. What's going on, Eileen? Somebody was just asking you about here. Okay. Well, the next thing I want to show all of you is something that I received in the mail today, and it just kind of blows me away, and I'm just going to show it to you right now. Being that we were talking about disc golf, and being that, my music for today, what was the song that I was listening to? I don't know if you'd ever get the one it's probably a little too difficult of a trivia quiz for music today, given what I was listening to before the show started. But anyway, I'm not going to say her real name, but Twinkle, who is in the group, you can see her right there. She sent me this shirt. So as many of you know, my condo here in Clearwater, Florida, Clearwater Beach, Florida, I have it decked out with a lot of music stuff, music posters from Def Leppard, Kiss, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, Rolling Stones, etc. And music is very much a part of my life. And it has been, being that my mother was a piano teacher. She taught me to, play the piano at a very young age. I was a very accomplished pianist, and go through high school into college, although I haven't played recently. And so music's always been a very big part of my life. And I can still read music and take a great interest in it. And so here at my place, when I had to finally had the chance to deck a place out like I wanted, like I could, that's what I've done. So you come to my place and come inside, you'll see a lot of music stuff. And so my other, of course, passion, as we were just talking about, was disc golf. Well, Twinkle found this shirt online that is a combination of music and disc golf. And what you'll see there is you can see that is a guitar with of course, the body of it and the neck. But it also is a disc golf scene where the body of the guitar is made up of trees, and then up the neck of the guitar is a disc golf basket with a disc flying toward it. It's amazing. And I'm completely blown away by it. And she also got me a very nice St. Patrick's Day card. And I continue to say that listeners do send me things. When I do get things, I most of the time, I let you know what I've received and show it to all of you. And I continue to say that I'm just one of the most fortunate people out there. I just, that people think of the program, think of me, think of my assistants and everything that we do, and feel motivated to send something, like this, that's very thoughtful with the kind words. Never could have guessed that anything like that would happen in my life. So, just thank you, Twinkle, and very thoughtful. Just a perfect shirt, perfect gift, and I think I'm going to wear it to trivia tomorrow night. It surely is the right size. So there you go. I want to make sure you can see it there. Make sure it's coming out right. So there you go, is what I received from Twinkle. And I just got it in the mail today. A combination guitar with disc golf scene. Just the coolest thing ever. So that's something else that was going on. And yeah, Cherie got a promotion. That is true. She did get a promotion. Congratulations to her. She's been looking, I think, for that promotion, and she certainly deserves it. Kathy says that shirt is beautiful. Cherie says it's a very cool shirt. Twinkle says, thanks, Kathy. Twinkle says, yes, I had to get it. Thank you, Twinkle. Glinda says, would love to hear you play the piano. Well, let me get back to practicing. First, I have to get something to play on, Linda, and then we can start thinking about practice. And once I practice, then I might think about playing some. I do know that I have VHS tapes in this condo of me playing music way, 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 way back in the day. We'll just see if I feel motivated ever to dig those tapes out. Indy says, great shirt. Tammy says, I was listening to your live show on the bus, and a complete stranger sitting next to me saw you on my phone and said, Ed's great. I love Unfound. I'm telling you, I don't know how many decades Unfound is going to go, but those kinds of stories, I believe, are always going to surprise me and amaze me. I never take any of this for granted, that people listen to the program and listeners run into each other and everything else. Tammy, where is that? Where I'd love to know where that happened, if you could tell us. That's very interesting. Joyce says, cool shirt. Beauty says, oh, that's so thoughtful and sweet. And only 2 thumbs up. More, Nina says. Yes, please remember to hit the thumbs up button, Screaming says. Thank you for that. Twinkle said, as getting famous. Well, the program is permitted to get famous. I don't know how much fame I really want to have. So thank you. And that's a great story. Tammy says, Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. Well, I guess we have covered a few disappearances up there. Maybe that's certainly a factor. And some of them were in the western part of the country. So, okay. Well, we certainly love our neighbors to the north, the listeners to the north. So thank you, Tammy, for letting me know about that. You're on the bus and somebody else sees it. That is awesome. I love it. Okay, great. All right. So that's all the intro stuff that I wanted to talk about before we got into the meatier part of the show. And anybody who's watched this live show knows how it goes. If you are new to the live show, I think you can already tell that it's a little more laid back than the actual episodes that come out every Friday. It's a little more of a smorgasbord, a little more buffet, a little more potpourri of different topics in and out of true crime. A lot of true crime stuff, which we'll be getting to here shortly, but a little non-true crime stuff, things that are going on in my life, conversations that I have, experiences that I have in the preceding week before the show happens. And most of that has to do with with disc golf or something like that. Okay. Let's answer a question. Got a few questions before the show got started tonight. So I'm going to start with 2 different people asked me about 2 different updates, and I'm going to cover those together. Betty asked me any updates on the Alan White case out of Dallas. If you remember, back, I think that was in December, that I did an Unfound Now on Alan White, who was a guy who went to work out before going to work that morning in Dallas, and he was seemingly on his way home, never made it home. And then his car was found off in a different direction. And to my knowledge, we're now, I guess, 1, 2, 3 months into this, maybe more than that, 4 months into this. And Betty, if you're out there, if you're watching this in a rerun, whenever, I don't know of any updates regarding that. I wouldn't say that I've been necessarily keeping my eyes peeled for every bit of information coming out about it, but I think I would know if he had been found alive or deceased. I think that I have my pulse on these Unfound Nows enough that I would know that. I believe he's still missing. So I don't know of any updates, any new information that has come out since I did the Unfound Now, which, like I said, was in December. The only reason I remember that is I remember where I was when I filmed that. I was over in DeBary, Florida for a disc golf tournament, which was in early December. So, Betty, not to my knowledge. Now, maybe somebody on Web Sleuths or something like that that's really, 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 really not following it and not doing anything else might know something that's going on, but I do not. All I can tell you, I think I'm following it enough to know if Alan had been found or not, and I don't think he has. The other update, Whitney asked me about any updates on Jason Landry. The only update I think that I can give you for his disappearance is that there was another search done within the last couple of weeks, and once again, they found nothing. So, I don't, I don't know what else to say about that. Will there be another search so that they've done 2 big ones now, one right when Jason disappeared, and now this one within the last couple of weeks? Will they do another one? Maybe. I don't know. I will be honest that I've not talked to Kent. After John and I interviewed Kent, We had like a kind of three-way messaging going on for a little while, but I've not gotten any messages or anything from Kent or John regarding Jason in a few weeks. So, other than the search being done, and I don't think anything being found during it, I don't think there are any other updates. So I don't think that there's any new information regarding Jason's disappearance since John Lord and I, if you don't know who John is, and I interviewed Jason's father back in February. That's to my knowledge. But once again, this is one of those things that I'm not following it on a daily basis. Just not possible for everything else that I have to do. But I think I would know if Jason was found deceased or alive, just like Alan White. I think I would know if that happened. Just like in Erica Lloyd's disappearance, that I wasn't following that daily either, but I knew just about at the same time all of you did that her remains had been found not far from her car down in the near the Joshua Tree National Park in California. So for Whitney and Betty and the rest of you, I know of no updates, maybe I should put it this way: no new information on either of those disappearances. Now, here, Kathy, who is a think tank member, who I gotten to know Kathy quite well. She says, I check on Alan White periodically, and apparently he was using a hookup app that morning. Kathy, I would be interested to know where you heard that, where you read that. Has that been verified? You know how I am, Kathy. Is this something that was just said on Web Sleuths, or was this something in the Dallas Morning News, a reputable media site that might help us in understanding that piece of information a little bit more, if you can remember, Kathy? But I appreciate that. If that is true, I don't know. I can say that I'm surprised. I that wouldn't surprise me. It's unfortunate. Maybe he got set up somehow. I don't know how he was going to fit this hooking up in the schedule of his life that morning. But I can't say that I would be totally surprised if that was the situation and maybe he got set up. I was just reading about, forget what state it was in. Was it in, I don't think it was in Florida, but was it some southern state, Louisiana, South Carolina, where a guy went on a Craigslist to sell a bike or buy a bike or something, and he showed up and got murdered. That was in the news within the last couple days. So these types of setups happen. In fact, being that we talked about luring last Friday, and it's always going to be a topic of conversation on Unfound for Stephanie Hartwell, this is another way to lure people, finding them on Craigslist. They're looking to sell a vehicle. Yeah, I want to buy your vehicle. And the person shows up hoping to kill the person and steal the vehicle. It happens. I wouldn't say it's common, but it certainly happens. And it happens enough that I think a lot of people know about it now. You never know when it can happen. But this, when you hear about people answering classified ads and then showing up and getting robbed, or women getting raped or murdered and people disappearing, this is another version of luring, for sure. So I want you to think of it in those terms when you see stories like that. That is another form of luring. Just like in Stephanie Hartwell's disappearance from last Friday, we believe that Katron and LaWanda lured Stephanie somewhere. We're not sure if LaWanda was an accomplice, a knowledgeable accomplice or not, but certainly Stephanie was lured somewhere, but that's a different form of luring. Kathy says, not verified for sure, but it was Grindr, the app. No, if true, not surprising. I believe I read it in an article. Well, Kathy, if you could, I'm not saying you have to do it right now, but if you could find that article, It'd be interesting where that came from, just to make sure, what the source was. Beauty says, so sad. Kathy says, Alan is fairly well off. Easy to be Lord. I don't know if money or anything else has anything to do with being Lord, Kathy. I don't know if there's a particular demographic that is any more susceptible than any other. Just depends who the predator is. And if that person knows what makes that prey tick. For Katron, I think a lot of us believe that he took advantage of Stephanie's, even though she was going to dump him, maybe she still cared about him, and he might have given her a story about maybe being suicidal or something, and that's all it took. Pulling on her heartstrings. That's a good way to lure people. Some people, it could be lure them with drugs or lure them with money, lure them with sex, as happened probably in Tyler North's disappearance. It all depends on what the buttons are of the person who is being preyed upon. What is that person's buttons? What are those things that gets that person motivated to do something? It just depends. So for Alan, I don't know if any of us know him enough to know that. But, he was in a committed relationship. If you remember, Alan is gay, homosexual. He was living with his husband or boyfriend. I don't know if they were married or not there. But if he's in a committed relationship, I don't know what he's doing on a dating app. I think that no matter what kind of relationship you're in, if it's in a committed relationship, I don't know what people are doing. I don't care what your sexuality is. So I just don't know. And that's why I'd like to hear a little bit more about the source for that article, Kathy. Okay. Speaking of Stephanie Hartwell, you know that on the live show, I always cover the results of the poll from the preceding preceding weekend from the discussion group. And a large majority not 100%, but about 97% thought that Stephanie did lie when she told her neighbors that she was going to the store. I kind of made that argument. I made that argument in the Patreon blog that I'm inclined to believe that she lied because she couldn't tell the neighbors the truth, because it wasn't her place to say what the reason that she was leaving. It's like, don't be so nebby. But in the think tank, it was a little more 50-50 about that. Some of them thought that maybe Steph really maybe she was going to the store and that was the truth. And there was some other luring that had been used. And then I think the other half kind of felt like myself. Now, the think tank, if you're wondering what that is, and Shri has already posted the link, that is a small get-together that I have with the premium Patreon members every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. Now, this week, we had it on Monday night because I was not going to be able to get back from playing in that disc golf tournament in time to be ready for 7 o'clock. I could have been, but I would have been unshaven. I would have been all sweaty. I wouldn't have had time to take a shower and all those things. So I don't want to appear in front of all of you like that. So that was not going to be able to be the case on Sunday. So we moved it till Monday night. We had a smaller group, but it was still a quality discussion. But that is the think tank. And that's where we talk in depth about the disappearance that is covered that week. And what I then do is take that information and bring it back to the guest for that episode. And of course, it also helps me think even deeper about the disappearance and the interview that I did, and maybe what I need to do in the future myself. And only premium Patreon members get to be a part of that. What means by premium, you have to be a contributor at the $12 a month level or above on Patreon. Not a large group, but I think that it's a little bit better that way. Usually we have 12 to 14 people in the group, and that feels just about right. Everybody gets to be heard. Everybody gets to express their opinions. Some people, if they don't want to talk at all, they can do that. They can just watch and listen. But it also allows me to talk more in one-on-one with some of the members about their thoughts, their opinions. And in that discussion, I try to play devil's advocate, taking the opposite of opinion of maybe what I think, just to stimulate more conversation. So once again, that's patreon.com/Unfound Podcast if you'd like to become a Patreon member. RS says, sounds like the Tim Bosma case. I'm not familiar with that Disappearance, RS. Twinkle says, I highly recommend the think tank. Lots to be learned there. Twinkle is part of the think tank, as is Kathy, Eileen. I know I see a couple other think tank members in the live show here tonight. And I appreciate all of you, the time you take on Sunday or Monday evenings to talk, because those think tanks usually go about an hour and a half. Okay, moving on from talking about Stephanie Hartwell. And of course, I will continue to be in contact with her sister, Sandoria, who I thought did a very good interview. And I enjoyed speaking to her, and I hope I will speak to her again soon. I had a talk. I can't give you this person's name. I'm not going to get into all of that. But I did have a talk with a TV producer within the last couple days. This is a guy I spoke to a few months ago on a totally different topic, which I'm not going to get into at this moment either, because it's kind of, once again, a little off the record, a little secret. But I will tell you that this person is trying to put together some sort of program. I don't know if it's going to be for a program that already exists or something that's just unique by itself. Looking into Janelle Matthews, of course, murder from Greeley, Colorado. And what he said was, he and I had spoken, like I said, a few months ago, maybe back in November, about some of the episodes that Unfound has covered in a particular demographic that he was looking for. And then what he said was he was looking into, he found out about Steve Pankey being charged and Janelle Matthews' remains being found. And then as he was doing research on it, he discovered that I had also interviewed Steve Pankey in October of 2019. And so we had a chance. So being that he found that out, being that he already knows me, I already know him. We had a chance to talk about Steve and Janelle Matthews' murder again on the phone within the last couple days. I think we spoke for about a half hour, 40 minutes, something like that. And I was just giving him my insight into Steve. I was very honest with him in that, I think my opinion is a little bit different from, for example, Sheree being the moderator here for this live show every week. She and I know, have different opinions about Steve Pankey and his guilt regarding the murder of Janelle Matthews. I don't mind saying that. I don't think Sheree minds me saying that either. So even amongst our little group at Unfound, our opinions on Steve Pankey differ. And in talking to this TV producer, I told him that. I just didn't represent my side of it. I told him, I feel one way, I think one way, but some of my assistants think the total opposite. And that's totally fine. Of course, my argument continues to be that despite all of the coverage that has happened since Steve was charged and the prosecutor coming out and giving his reasons for charging Steve, it still seems like a very circumstantial case. And so myself and this TV producer, we talked about that. And so he's going to be continuing to work on this, see if he can put something together. And maybe I'll get to be a part of it or not. I don't know. I guess the advantage that I have is that I was one of the few people who got to interview Steve over the last couple years. I know he did some media appearances, but I have to believe that the interview I did with him was the most in-depth. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I know he told the truth. I don't know. All I know is I asked the toughest questions that I could, and he answered them. Whether he was being truthful, that's up for you to decide. but I've done probably the most in-depth interview with him. And I hope that puts me, toward the front of the line if they're going to be doing something, making a program regarding Janelle Matthews' death, her murder, and whether Steve Pankey did it. So it was interesting to talk about all of that. And so it was good to talk to this guy again as well. I think from his standpoint, it was just, he said it, I think he was very surprised. He got to know me last year, and then we hadn't talked in a while. And then he had moved on to trying to, look into Janelle Matthews' murder. And of course, Steve Pankey, and all of a sudden my name pops up again while he's doing his research. And so we were talking again, and that's sometimes how things work. So it was good to talk. And one of the things I will tell you that I always do when I talk to people like this is that I try to give them the comparisons to other disappearances that we've covered on Unfound, or maybe even some that we haven't yet covered that I just happen to know about, or ones that were disappearances that then became murders and they were solved. So I was going through that comparison between Janelle Matthews' disappearance, and now we know murder, and other disappearances that we've covered. In particular, I brought up Evelyn Hartley because I think you could see a lot of similarities. Evelyn Hartley, although she wasn't home alone, she was there in La Crosse, Wisconsin, at that house babysitting. I even forget how was the baby, 6 months old? I mean, really young. So it's essentially like she's home alone, but she's not even in her house. She was in somebody else's house. And how was it that somebody showed up at that house and then took Evelyn away? Was this a situation where the person knew Evelyn was there and wanted to take her specifically? Or was it this person was breaking into the house and just discovered Evelyn being there and just decided, well, I got to take her because she now can identify me? This is the same kind of thing with Janelle Matthews. This is a very small window in which somebody could have abducted her, taken her away, and murdered her. Very, very small window. And so the question still, at least to the public, until the prosecutor can offer up more evidence, maybe that might not happen until a trial happens, is was this a situation where if the prosecutor believes Steve Pankey did this, that he was stalking Janelle Matthews and wanted to harm her? Or is it that Steve thought maybe he was a burglar and he thought the Matthews weren't home and he went in, Janelle happened to be there? Don't know. I guess we'll find out eventually if this ever, goes to trial. So, and we also talked about Steve being a very unique type of guy, very paranoid, seems to think that all these, news stories somehow involve him. And I continue to say, even if he did kill Janelle Matthews, that he made himself the target by his own actions way back in the 1980s. So, and I've not talked to Steve. Of course, he's in jail now. But as far as talking to him on the phone, the only time I ever spoke to him on the phone was when we did the interview. Although we did have some emails after I interviewed him, but not very many, maybe 5 or 6. I think that's about it. And then, of course, he's been in jail. Beauty says we can all agree to disagree. It's life, right? I think it is. And, regarding Steve Pankey and his guilt, I don't mind that myself and some of my assistants, our opinions are different. If that's why I continue to say, if we knew what happened, we could just go solve it right now. But yes, disagreeing on disappearances, I think, is healthy. Screaming says, I research a ton about Evan Hartley. Yeah. And just, I suppose Screaming, just like Anthony, who was my guest for that episode, who did a lot of work on it. Baby Janice was around. 8 months, I believe. Okay, Screaming. Like I said, I knew I was very, very young. Screaming says, that is the big question, Ed. Screaming, my wife and I actually drove past the house Evelyn was abducted from a few years ago when we visited La Crosse, Wisconsin. Yeah, very creepy vibe. I suppose it can give you a creepy vibe if you know what went on there. Sure. Kind of like that house from what is it? Oh, I can't think of it now. I'm gonna have my brain locked up. What was that house that was allegedly haunted? They made a movie out of it and everything else. I know one of you is going to be able to bring that to me. It was even an In Search Of episode, I believe, that it was allegedly possessed. And now to these days, I believe, of course, it was just some huge hoax. Amityville Horror. There you go. Amityville, that house in Amityville. If you didn't know, the story and everything, if you drove by it, would you get any creepy vibes? Probably not. But it's funny how that works. Yeah. Amityville. Thank you. Everybody's saying Amityville now. I'm glad I got it on my own, but I'm glad also that a lot of you knew what I was talking about. Okay. Speaking of which, maybe this is a good segue into the next topic from talking with this TV producer and then Screaming saying about going past the house where Evelyn was abducted. I actually took a road trip to Plant City on Monday by myself. Plant City is on the exact opposite side of Tampa. In fact, it's in the kind of the area where Jeremy and Bonnie Dagus disappeared from, in the 1990s. Well, we are going to be covering a disappearance from that area again, but a much more recent one from last year. And so I took the opportunity, being that I had some time on Monday, to drive over there. It's about an hour and a half drive, but I went by myself. It's a work trip, and took some video of where she disappeared from, where her car was found around that area. And so when that episode comes out, I will be able to provide some video firsthand of me being there and talking as I'm filming, which was not fun. That's harder than it looks. Luckily, there weren't too many cars around, but, driving, filming, and talking at the same time, it can get a little dangerous. So I hope it came out. The video, I think, came out fine, but I didn't realize until I started doing it, because that was the plan. I'm going to go over there. I'm going to do this, going to say this, going to do that. And then once I started doing it, I was like, well, this is a lot more complicated than I thought. So, but I was over there. And so I was near an area where a young woman disappeared, and it wasn't even that long ago, at the beginning of last year. So that's coming up in the next couple weeks. I think it's going to be next Friday, not this Friday. I think it's going to be next Friday. Pretty sure. We haven't done the interview yet, but pretty sure it's going to be next Friday. So, yeah, everybody's staying Amityville. Yes, Amityville. I think that's in New York. I think. So I did a little bit of a road trip. Haven't done one of those for a while. Going to an area locally around here where somebody disappeared. Last time I did that, 4 or 5 months ago. It's still a disappearance that we haven't covered yet. I think eventually we will cover it. It's another local disappearance to the Tampa, Clearwater, St. Petersburg area. But maybe 4 months ago, I took an afternoon to kind of drive around and check out a few things regarding that disappearance. So once in a while, I have an opportunity to do that. Once again, if it's local, as I've told you many times, a disappearance we covered very early on in Unfound's existence, Kelly Rothwell. That disappearance happened about 5 miles south of me, and there is a mobile station, convenience store down there, gas station, that I stop in once in a while when I go down that way, and I get gas there. I've also bought my Powerball and Mega Millions tickets there, and I've gotten to know the clerk there who works there at night fairly well. Every time I go in there, we end up talking about something. And it's almost directly across the street from where that station, that convenience store is where Kelly Rothwell was surely murdered, and David Perry took her body and dumped her somewhere. Where she was living with David is almost directly across the street from that convenience store where I go. And in fact, I've told the clerk about that. So, and in fact, when I go to the post office, it's also very close to where Kelly's car was dumped, within, I don't know, 100 yards or something. So that always comes to mind when I go down that direction. Linda says Amityville's in Long Island. Yeah, I think I knew that. Thank you. Suzanne says, can't wait to hear her case. I've been following. Screaming says, I'll be right back. Okay, Screaming, you go. You do what you got to do. So I took a little road trip to Plant City that day. The funny part is, wouldn't you know, I would happen to go over the day that they were having a parade. And so I got there just fine and did all the filming and I saw everything I wanted to see. But then when I had to come back, this parade had started and the traffic pattern was so messed up there in Plant City. And it was almost impossible to get back to the Interstate 4. It was crazy. But what kind of town has a parade on a Monday at 1 p.m? I don't know. But that happened. So it's just kind of fun. I was just like, oh man, this is a disaster. All right, let's go back to the questions. Kim asks me, we know when you started Unfound, but I don't think or at least I haven't heard the epiphany or the moment when the idea came to you. Well, Kim, I've talked about this, and I really don't want to go into the step-by-step process, but I've covered this topic in at least one Q&A episode, and the next Q&A episode will be coming out in April. Maybe I'll cover that topic again. But I think most people know that I co-hosted a program before Unfound, and that program kind of fell apart. And it was after that, though, that I knew I didn't want to give up on that. On covering missing persons cases. But in looking back at what myself and the co-host had done, it gave me some perspective to look at what I liked and what I didn't like about the program. Even though I think people, if they can find those episodes out there, I think that they like it. But looking back at it, I was saying, here's what was bad. Here's what was good. Just going to do the good parts, get rid of the bad parts, and craft something new. And one of the major points, Kim, was that I decided that I wanted to go right to the source for the information instead of just using work that other people did. That was very important to me. It just felt kind of lazy to just take somebody else's work and just repeat what they wrote and what they did and, turn it into a program. And I'm kind of that way anyway. I don't like ripping people off and ripping things up. I'm a very creative guy. I don't know if that comes across in the episodes or not, but many of you know that I've written some novels. I love to craft stories. I feel just perfectly at home sitting by myself in front of my computer, writing 3,000 words a day. That's no problem for me. I did that for many years, going back to like 2009, 2010, 3,000 words, typing them out every day. So I'm a creative type of person. I like to be unique. Didn't want to rip anybody off. And that was a huge part of how Unfound got created. And that we're just going to go right to the source if we can find those sources. And we're going to talk to them. And I'm going to interview them. And then the people are going to get to decide what they think happened. That was it. That's what the program continues to be 4.5 years later. But maybe I can do even more, once again, do a more complete answer on that, Kim, come April for the next Q&A episode, which will be Q&A episode number 3. I only do those once a year. I think that'll be the next to last Friday of April. So probably another 5 weeks, something like that. Okay. Let's move on to this. If some of you saw Linda Stoltzfoos, the man who is believed to have murdered her, and I always, every time I get to this name, Justo Smoker, Julio Smoker, Justo, Justo Smoker. He was the guy that was seen on video talking to Linda, her getting into his car. A judge in Pennsylvania has decided that there is enough evidence to go to trial for the murder of Linda, even though her remains have still not been found. This is noteworthy because Linda's disappearance was the first Unfound Now episode I did for YouTube. That was an idea that came to me last year. I wanted to cover more recent disappearances and give all of you an idea how we at Unfound analyze these disappearances when they first come on the scene. And so I've done one of those about every month since then. We talked about Jason Landry, Ellen White. Those were two other disappearances that I've covered for Unfound. Now Erica Lloyd is another one, and there are a few others, once again, starting in June or July of 2020, and it continues up to this day, although I've not done one yet for March. We also did a Leah Scheibel in February from Las Vegas. So this is a nobody case. It seems that there's enough information. Prosecutors decided that he wants to charge Mr. Smoker with Linda's murder, and we'll get to see how that goes. I don't know if any of you saw that, but that's what's going on. But most importantly, we have to remember Linda's remains, or Linda herself, has still not been found. And even though my understanding is that they were able to trace Smoker's cell phone here and there, he made some calls to some people, and still her remains have not been found. It's tough. It's tough. So that is an update. You asked me if there was any updates on Jason Landry's or Alan White's disappearances from Unfound Now episodes. No, but there's certainly an update on Linda Stoltzfoos's. And if you remember, she was Amish, and she was at somebody's house, and she was walking back to her own house. And it seems this guy was waiting for her. It seems that this guy knew her patterns, knew that she would be walking, and he just happened to be there at the right time. That's the way it seems. I guess we'll find out if that's actually the truth when a trial happens. I just don't get the feeling that this was just a random encounter. It does seem that maybe he was keeping an eye on her for a while. Twinkle asked me, so without that experience, you may not have thought to start Unfound. Twinkle, that's very possible. Very possible that without doing that other program, that Unfound would have never been created. I think that's highly possible. I don't know how probable it is, but I've always been interested in disappearances for a very, very long time. But I think that I was unique in that, for example, I've still never listened to one episode of Serial. Didn't even know existed. I just had my interest in it that was disconnected from all of the popularity that the true crime started getting when the program Serial came out on iTunes and was, a blockbuster. I knew nothing about that. I just knew that I like to read about it, these things. I like to go on NamUs and try to match missing people with unidentified remains all on my own, totally outside what anybody else was doing. So it's very possible that, yes, if this other program had not existed and we only did 5 or 6 episodes, if it had not happened, maybe Unfound would not have been started. Who knows where I'd been now? Who knows where I would be in 2021? I just can't say. But I certainly can tell you that starting this program and what's gone on over the last 4.5 years is probably the greatest thing that's ever happened to me in my life. So that's just how things work out sometimes. Just as much planning as you do and planning for success and everything else, sometimes those things that you plan for never happen, and things that are very positive that happen, you don't plan for. That's all I can tell you. Delane, I'd love an Unfound Now on Justin Evans from Canada. Such odd circumstances. Delane, how recent a disappearance is it? You'll have to tell me that. Remember, Unfound Now, we like to cover kind of recent disappearances, maybe within the last couple months. Kathy says no updates on Corey Dale Moore either. None. No. That's another Unfound Now. No. Sheree says, I'm thinking Justin's friend knows what happened, Delane. Okay. I'll be happy to take a look at it, Delane. Just doesn't ring a bell right now. Sheree's saying it happened in December. I'll just have to take a look at it. I guess it's a possibility. Let's move on to this. The discussion group. I just want to remind all of you that and I know many of you, if not all of you, are in there. And I know you love to post about missing people there, and you take part in the discussions, and you know what I post. Some of my assistants post things. Of course, I give you links to this live show and everything. But regarding posts regarding missing people, I just want to make sure that everybody is following the rules there. And as much as I would like the discussion group to be a place where anybody could post any disappearance that ever has happened at any time in there, the reason that is not allowed is because if we did that, it would just be post after post after post. There would be no discussion. It would be a post, and then an hour later, that post that happened would be like 100 down, and hope nobody would ever see it because so many people would be posting. So we just try to have to keep, a control on that. And it does seem to me once in a while people will post a disappearance that happened, for example, in 2017. And I want you to know that I care about all of these disappearances. Okay. But I also have to worry about the integrity of the discussion group and whether it is orderly or not. And when it gets to the point that anybody can post anything at any time, it sounds a little too chaotic to me. So that's why when it comes to the posting of disappearances, it's either an update. It's certainly if something happens in an update of a disappearance that happened in 2010, absolutely. If there's new evidence, somebody gets charged or anything like that, absolutely. But if it's just a flyer or a poster or something, then what I would prefer is that those people who come across those types of that type of information, just send it to me or send it to my assistant, Emily. And that way, maybe we can get something started to have one of their family members on the program. Whereas if you come across a disappearance that happened within the last month or 2 months, if you want to post that in the group, that's perfectly fine. We just can't have it. And I'm not trying to be cold about this, but trust me, there is a method to my madness regarding, and my assistants and the moderators, Heather and Carrie, know that there is a method to our madness in the group of what we allow to be posted and what we don't. It's no different than, if you're on Instagram and you're following like 10,000 people. Well, at some point, there's no way you can see every picture that every one of those people posted. There's just no way to do that. And so it's kind of useless. And we don't want posts in the group to become useless. So that means we have to really restrict the kind of posts that happen there. All right, that's why we do that. And so that's why also, being that we have the rules posted in the announcement section, if you do post something that is outside the rules, we will delete it without warning, and you will get no explanation for it. And also in the discussion group, if you post something that is really, really out of bounds, like I know recently somebody just posted a feed to some live show that was happening somewhere that had nothing to do with anything. If you do that, you're going to get blocked. Once again, no questions asked. You will get no warning. If your post is really, really outside of the rules. So I just wanted to cover that. Just so everybody understands that. Okay. I understand. Moving on to something else, and this was a post in the group that Unfound got mentioned by Stephanie Harlow's podcast. I'm not sure who posted that. I did not write down what member posted it, but having to do a video with the disappearance of Mandy Stokes. That's a disappearance we covered way back in 2017. Her mother, Deborah, was on the program. If you remember, this happened. Was it Oakland or San Francisco? And Mandy had been living with her brother. They had an argument. She took off. She was talking to her boyfriend who lived on the East Coast. And in mid-sentence, the conversation got cut off. And the boyfriend never spoke to Mandy again. And then later, Mandy's car was found a little ways away, right, blocking traffic on the street near where she lived. And I'm guessing that Stephanie Harlow was talking about Mandy's, did a video on Mandy's disappearance and mentioned Unfound. So I want to, Oakland in the East Bay. Thank you, Kathy. So I want to thank Stephanie for mentioning Unfound. Recently, I don't know if this is a coincidence or not, just within the last 2 months, I had done a map video for Mandy's disappearance, showing you where she lived at the time, where her car was found, the direct route from her apartment to where the car was found, and showing how there's been this talk that at the time she was talking to her boyfriend on the phone, that she was driving around the parking lot of her apartment complex. Well, there was no parking lot for her apartment complex. So she might have been driving around, but it wasn't around her apartment complex. She might have just been driving on the streets, on the regular streets around her apartment, but there was not necessarily any parking lot. I think you had to find place to park in the street or wherever else. So, but I want to thank Stephanie for mentioning Unfound. I've not spoken to her mother in quite a while. I understand that her son, who was living with Mandy, who frankly is a suspect in Mandy's disappearance, I think that he continues to have drug problems that he did have at the time of Mandy's disappearance, although he does not live in California anymore. So thank you to Stephanie for mentioning Unfound during her program. Let's move on to this. Let's talk about this. Recently, there is this guy. His name is Aaron Stoner. He has a YouTube channel. And recently he was able to track down Jordan Zirkle, who was Stephen Kocher's roommate at the time that Stephen disappeared in December of 2009. I want you to know, somebody asked me in the discussion group if I know Aaron, if I've ever spoken to him. I've heard that Aaron has mentioned Unfound in some of his videos, and I appreciate him doing that. But I want you to know I've never spoken to him. I don't know him. I know that I've never spoken to him on the phone. I even went back and checked my emails to see if he and I ever had any email exchanges. And the answer was no. However, I will tell you this, that his name did come up. I even forgot that this happened, but his name did come up in a conversation I was having with somebody else about Stephen Kocher's case. And the same way, I was like, I don't know who Aaron is. And that's no cut against Aaron. There's a lot of people I don't know. That's not to diminish Aaron in any way, but as I've made clear very often, I pretty much just keep my eyes on my own work, and usually I don't know what a lot of other people are doing out there. But he had a chance to track down, and I give him all the credit in the world to Aaron for tracking down Jordan Zirkle. And they did an interview. I did have a chance to listen to this interview that was not quite a half hour long. And I think this is the first time that Jordan ever spoke to anybody in public, that his comments, his beliefs, his thoughts, what he remembers about Steven in that time has ever come out in the public. So I want to give Aaron all the credit in the world. I wish I had time to do things like that, but I'm glad that somebody else is doing it. And I think that's great. Just to say here, cut in a moment. RS, I'd love to see someone give someone coverage to the Melanie Ethier case from New Liskeard, Ontario, Canada. It's going for 25 years, and I believe it is solvable. Is that a disappearance, RS? If it's a disappearance, we'll give it a shot. You send information to myself or to my assistant, Emily, and we'll see what we can do. But it has to be a missing persons case. But getting back to Aaron, there are still, though, questions that I would have asked Jordan if I'd gotten to talk to him myself. And I think this is one of, there's a reason that on Unfound that we don't do cold interviews in which I call somebody up and just start talking to the person, and then that becomes an episode. If you don't know, the episodes that we do for the program are very scripted. We follow an outline. The guest agrees to the topics before the interview is ever conducted. They control the information. They control what they want to talk about. That's why sometimes, for example, sometimes we use names, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we use fake names. Sometimes we just use first names. This is all decided by the guest, not by myself. My only stipulation is that if we're going to cover the information, we have to cover all of it, and we just can't show bias to any one particular piece of information over any other, just to make something look the way the guest wants. We have to cover everything, or the person can't be on the program. So, but with Aaron and Jordan, there are some additional questions that I would have asked that I don't think Aaron ever did. Maybe he did ask them to Jordan, but maybe they didn't make it into the video, or he asked them at a different time. I don't know. But being that I think we now know a lot more about Marcus DiMaggio, who lived on Evening Lights Street Avenue in Henderson, where Steven was that day. I think it would have been very interesting to know if Jordan had ever heard of Marcus DiMaggio. I don't think that Aaron asked him that. I'm not undercutting what Aaron did. I give him all the credit in the world for tracking Jordan down. I think Jordan even lives in Utah anymore. I think he lives in Illinois or somewhere. So I give him the credit to get Jordan to come on the phone, and Jordan agreeing to do so. But I think that Marcus DiMaggio, especially given now that we posted all of those police reports on the Unfound Podcast channel, or the unfoundpodcast.com website. A few months ago, I'd gotten my hands on all of that from a contact that I still had in Las Vegas. It's clear that Marcus DiMaggio should be more of a focus these days than probably has ever been. Instead, Jordan and Aaron, spent most of the time talking about Brett Bishop, who I can understand that Jordan knew Brett. Jordan was, rented a room or a house or apartment from Brett. And Jordan had a lot to say about Brett on how weird he was. And Jordan talked about seeing the Porsche, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I certainly would have liked to have Jordan talk about Marcus DiMaggio. If somebody could get a picture of Marcus DiMaggio, show it to Jordan and say, did you ever see this? You being around in St. George, did you ever see him? Did you ever hear this name? Did anything like that? I think that's very important. Now, I don't know if anybody could have guessed that would have been important in 2010 or 2011, but certainly now in 2021, it is much more important. I think that the other issue was that I would have liked to have heard if Jordan knew anything about if Steven had ever been to Las Vegas before, because, the story that has been around for over 11 years now is that Steven maybe had only been to Las Vegas once before and had been years ago, and nobody knows what he was doing in Las Vegas and everything else. Well, is that Jordan's opinion too? Did he have any reason to believe that Steven at one point or another had gone to Las Vegas well before he ever disappeared there? And I know what I've learned from doing interviews. Don't expect people to offer information up. It's not necessarily that they're hiding it. It's just that they may not know the importance of something. And so you really have to ask them. You can't expect people to offer things up. I've certainly learned that over 4.5 years, and I had to learn that the hard way myself. So those were a couple issues that I saw in the interview with Jordan, that Aaron interviewed him. The other thing, though, that I thought was weird, and once again, this is nothing against Aaron. I want to say for the record, I think it's spectacular that he got Jordan to go in the record. It was interesting to hear what Jordan had to say. But what confused me is that Jordan kept saying, well, Brett was weird. Brett was this. Brett was that. I didn't like Brett. Brett. I don't like him. You got this idea that Brett and Jordan did not get along. That's the feeling that I got from this interview. And you can go see it on Aaron Stoner's channel right here on YouTube. But on the other hand, for Jordan to keep saying that he didn't like Brett and he knew all these things, he knew about all this stuff, he sure did seem to know what Brett was doing all the time. And I think about it in terms of when I used to live down in Madeira Beach, where Unfound got started, my landlord lived in the same building. In fact, she and I shared a wall. That my kitchen wall was on the opposite side of that was her bedroom wall. That's how close we lived. And I'm still friends with her. I still talk to her. I Terry, her real name's Teresa, but I called her Terry. She and I got along great. She was a great landlord, and I enjoyed living there while I did. But she and I shared a wall together, and I never had any idea at all what she was doing. I could go for days without seeing her. Days, weeks without seeing her, even though she lived right next to me, not keeping tabs on her or anything. And even though I liked her, Terry, if you ever watch this, I want you to know you were a great landlord. I like you very much. And anytime I go down that direction to Madeira Beach, I do try to stop in and see if she's around just to see what's going on. And I like Terry. To this day, I like Terry. But here we have Jordan, who said that Brett was weird. He was this, he was that. Not a lot of nice things to say about him. But Jordan certainly did seem to know everything about Brett. And one thing that popped out was that Jordan said that Brett always used to go to this area called the Strip, which was somewhere out in the desert, high desert, in southern Utah near the Arizona-Utah border, which is if you don't know, a very scary place in the United States, if you don't know. I'll just leave it at that. But how would Jordan know that where Brett was going and he was out at the Strip and he was doing this and doing that? I just found that part of the interview to be a little confusing. Once again, not criticizing Aaron. He's just answering the questions. But I know that if I would have been talking to Jordan, that I would have asked him, well, how did you know he was there? If, that's miles and miles and miles away, how did you know he was there? Because he said so? Because you were there too? Did you ever think that he was lying to you? These types of questions. So I think what I'm saying is that I think, and on top of everything else, we don't even know if Jordan's telling the truth. Certainly sounds like a decent guy. I think the day that Aaron interviewed him, that he sounded like he was at work or something like this. I'm glad that he has a job and whatever he's doing with his life, I hope he's doing well. But I think that there's still many more questions that Jordan can answer. Maybe, I'm not here to steal Aaron's thunder. I'm perfectly willing for Aaron to keep interviewing Jordan as long as he wants, and that's fine by me. I'm not going to try to, jump in the middle of all of this. Aaron's done the footwork on this, and if he wants to continue to do it, fine by me. I got enough things to do. But my opinion is that more questions need to be asked of Jordan, because it sounds to me like some things still need to be resolved, and there may be more information that he has that he maybe just doesn't know that it's important. And we also have to consider the idea maybe he wasn't telling the truth. We just don't know. But most importantly, what I'd like to hear from Jordan is his understanding about all that driving that Stephen was doing. And did he know if Stephen regularly went to Las Vegas? And if he did talk to Stephen, what did they say? And, and all these things. And ask about Marcus DiMaggio. And so I want to give credit to Aaron Stoner. I would recommend you go to his channel. And I know he's done some good work with Stephen Kocher's Disappearance. But I think that I'm just like the public in that I think they would like to hear more. I think that there's just from my interview experience with people talking to, interviewing over 200 people for the program, Jordan sounds like somebody who still needs to be pumped for more information, I think. So just my opinion, maybe some of you have seen that interview. You have your thoughts and your opinions and what you heard and everything else. But that's what I heard. But I, once again, give all the credit in the world for Aaron to tracking him down, getting him to go on the record, getting that recorded legally, and letting the public listen to it. But I think it's also one of those things where, we get answers, but they just generate maybe more questions. Maybe. All right. Let's go to another question. And this came from Karen, who I think is in here tonight. She asks me, Ed, would you ever have anyone else interview the guests? And then in parentheses, she puts, I'm guessing no. Well, Karen, I got to do something around here. We have Natasha taking care of the YouTube channel. She adds all the information to the website. We got Cherie, who does her own research and finds people, and some things that she's working on by herself right now. She, of course, moderates this live show every Wednesday. Of course, we know what Emily does. Eric runs Unfound on the Ground. After all this, I want to do something too to help the team. So, but seriously, the interviewing is the most important part of everything that we do. Everything that else that goes on with the program comes from the talks that I do with the guests. And I know what I've learned over the last 4.5 years is that it is an acquired talent. I don't think anybody is going to sit down and interview anybody regarding anything, whether it has to do with missing persons cases, an athlete, a professional athlete, a musician, a politician, an actor, anybody in a scientist, a well-known scientist, or whatever else, and expect the first time you do that to get it right. And so, Karen, I think after 4.5 years of doing Unfound, I think the expectations from the public for the interviews that I do is fairly high. So for somebody else to be able to do interviews for the program, it would have to be somebody who has the experience already or is going to gain the experience over time somehow. Now, I will admit my assistant, Emily, oftentimes when she contacts families for the first time, she does quite a bit of talking with them. It's all off the record and everything. But I'm still not sure that, that's the same as interviewing people when they know that what they say is going to be made public. And there's a certain way that we do things here, as I just stated a few minutes ago, is that these interviews are all, although I use the word scripted, they're all outlined. We follow outlines that I put together. The outline is a very important part of, oh, Cherie, behave. Thank you. The outlines are a very important part. What makes the interviews good is the guest. Absolutely. But to make it understandable to the public, there needs to be an order in which items are covered. And I think by this time, if you've listened to the program, you know that each interview follows kind of the same general form. Even though the facts may be different and a whole bunch of things may be different, they still follow a very general form. But getting that outline just right and getting things in the right order and how you want to cover is very, very important. And it's even something that I continue to work on myself, even though I've created over 200 of them over the last 4.5 years. So, and I know that when I started Unfound, I know that I'm a better interviewer now, being that we've replayed some of these older interviews, Andrea Bowman's within the last 6 months, of course, Robin Abrams, Joshua Guimond's. I hear those interviews and I think they're fine. But I can also say that if the interviews were done these days, that they would be different. And I think that they would be better. And this is why I like to go back and replay some of those and redo them and then offer up new commentary at the end, just including things that I've learned over the last 4.5 years that I didn't know back when those interviews were conducted. So it'd have to be very, very special circumstances, Karen, where somebody else would actually somebody would actually do their own interviews for the program once in a while. However, I certainly would like to get to the point, because I do know that eventually, as this program continues to grow and we do different things, that some decisions are going to have to be made regarding some of these things. If I were to happen to get a lot of speaking engagements at schools, speaking to criminal justice majors, there's only so many hours in a week. But everything comes for the episode. So those have to be done. So I just don't know. The answer right now, would you ever have anyone else interview the guest? The answer right now is no. But with different new facts come different theories. So we're always looking to expand. It's all about education here. And if somebody else is going to do the interviews, they're going to have to do them at a very high level that's going to have to meet my standard. So there you go. Thank you once again. Thank you, Cherie. Karen, I agree with you. That's why I asked. Well, thank you for the question. There you are, Karen. Jill says, there is a scientific method to Unfound. I guess you could say that, Jill. Kathy, interviewing is a skill just like anything else. I did hundreds of interviews in my job. Yes, and we know what your job did, Kathy, and I'm guaranteed the people you talk to are even more nervous than the guests I have on the program. Yes, Jill. Eileen, the Steve Pankey interview should really be your highlight reel. I think most people wouldn't have been able to keep him on task as you did. Well, the big thing about that, Eileen, was I was very clear with Steve. And of course, I would never say this to any other guest who's ever been on the program. But I told him, if you try to evade even one question that I ask you, this interview is over. It's over, period. Because, he came to me. And because of that, I got to set the rules as to what was going to go. I was going to be asking him any other question. I gave him an outline. There was still an interview outline. But I put down a lot of questions that I was going to ask him. And I told him, if at one point he says, well, I can't answer that, I don't want to answer that or anything like that, the interview was over. Because at that point, he's just wasting my time. And I have other people to talk to. I have family members to talk to. And here I am talking to a possible murderer. I don't mind talking to possible murderers, but I'm not going to take their crap either. By them saying, well, I can't answer that, I'm going to plead the fifth. So probably, Eileen, that's why it went the way it did. And it also helps that Steve loves the attention. There is a method to my madness. There is certainly some madness going on, Beauty. Certainly. Okay. Jill, your question is going to get answered last here in a moment. So, once again, talking about Aaron Stoner, I don't want anybody to think that I'm criticizing him. I just know that I think there's still, I think anybody would say, there's still a lot of work still to be done with Stephen's case. I think that there continues to be information out there that the public can get that it hasn't gotten. And I'm glad that there is somebody out there who is pushing to find new people to talk to after 11 years. In fact, with this new project that I've mentioned, this is what we're going to be trying to be doing on some of these older Unfound episodes from 2016, 2017, going back through and working with some of the think tank members to try to find some additional people like a Jordan Zirkle to talk to, people who did not get talked to the first time around. And that's what we're going to try to do. So, we hope it goes well, and I hope it goes very well for Aaron Stoner as well. I hope that he certainly does find some new information regarding Stephen's disappearance, information that has not made it to the public yet. It would be certainly interesting if he was able to track down Marcus DiMaggio and get him on the record. But it seems to me that maybe Jordan Zirkle maybe still knows a lot more than Jordan realizes. So there you go. One more thing I want to talk about regarding items involving Unfound and Unfound cases is that I'm still hearing that this grand jury for Tom Brown is going to happen. I don't know when, but it's supposed to. We'll see what happens. Let's see. It's supposed to happen this year. We'll see what happens. I continue to have my doubts about a lot of this. What this feels like to me is like when somebody is charged with a crime, and maybe somebody prominent, and what's the defense attorney say? First thing that my client denies all the charges, and we look forward to our day in court when we can totally show that the plaintiff is lying and all these charges are cooked up and everything else. And then a week later, that prominent person is, taking a deal and pleading guilty. We just have to remember that when anything that it comes to the law and anything that might go to trial or might go to a grand jury, anything that is said beforehand doesn't mean anything because it's not prosecutable. Nobody's under oath. Nobody's worrying about their ethics or anything else. So when you hear that a grand jury is going to happen and this is going to happen and that's going to happen, it doesn't mean anything until it does happen. And even then, people could change their stories because once again, then they're under oath and there might be perjury charges and all these things. So until this stuff happens, I'm going to continue to be very cynical about a grand jury for Tom Brown's disappearance. That's just the way I'm going to be. There's just been too much stuff, too many promises, many big talkers and everything else to think otherwise. It's very important to me. This disappearance, just like all the others, is very important to me. I care about Tom's family deeply, even though, I do have some disagreements with how things have gone and people they have embraced and everything else. I care about the Brown family deeply. But I also can't help to be cynical about all of this, because if you've been following Tom Brown's disappearance, I mean, I've known about it since about April of 2018. Many of you have known about it since it happened. I don't know how you couldn't be cynical after everything that's gone on. So, this is where I stand on all of this. Jill says, thank you for contributing to my procrastination. Anything to help, Jill. Linda, how many interviews have you done when somebody refused to answer a question? Well, that doesn't happen too often, Linda, because I end up talking to family members and they are very motivated to answer questions. In fact, for most of them, you can't ask them enough questions. The only times that I've had instances when people refuse to answer questions is, for example, when we covered the disappearance of Judith Emke. And there was the allegation that she was having an affair with her neighbor. And maybe that could have something to do with her disappearance. Well, I got to speak to her neighbor. And he was a bit flippant. And he did not answer a couple of the questions that I asked him. Now, does that make him guilty? Does that make him being responsible for Judith's disappearance? I don't know. But that happened. I have to tell you off the top of my head, I just forget his name right now. But I did talk to him sometime after the episode came out. And I did talk to Judith's daughter, the guest for that episode, about it. And so, yes, the answer is yes. It hasn't happened often because I haven't been put in many of those types of situations. But Linda, yes, it has happened. But not with any guests who have been on the program. Thank you, Tisha, for the kind words. Kathy said, John from Brain Scratch gave the money Panky had given to him to charity once he found out who he was. I heard about that, Kathy. I want you to know that Steve Panky also was a Patreon supporter for a month for Unfound, and I did not give him his money back, because if he wants to pay for his own demise, I'm perfectly willing to allow him to do that. Because, I mean, even though I may be inclined to believe that he didn't kill Janelle Matthews, I'm still going to work as much as I can, of course, with all the other things that are going on. If I get any information that Steve Panky killed Janelle Matthews, his money is not going to affect me in any way. In fact, the way I look at it is, if Steve wants to give me money that then allows me to put him in jail because he's guilty, then I'm going to take it. So I know it's just a different attitude, but I do know that John did do that. I remember when that happened. So I just have a totally different attitude regarding it. It's not because I'm desperate for money or anything else. As you know, we don't run ads or anything else on the program. But there is, to me, a kind of poetic justice that if Steve is guilty, that he's paying people who then are going to put him in jail by reporting on Janelle Matthews' murder. And I will be, happy about that. And if Steve is guilty and he goes to jail, I'll be happy about that too. So, all right, Screaming. Thank you. Thanks for watching tonight. Thank you. Just a couple real quick things. Did you see the story about Roberto Colon, Palm Beach County? His wife went missing on February 22nd, and he told cops she's sleeping with the fishes. And it turns out that she wasn't. It turns out that he had buried his wife in the backyard. And this kind of reminded me, going back to the Kayleen Oling disappearance we covered a couple weeks ago, where the man that she got pregnant with said that she was sleeping with the fishes. And I think there are reasons to believe he might be lying. There might be reasons he's telling the truth. But that was a story that popped up on the national news within the last week. This guy, Roberto Colon, once again, killed his wife. She went missing on February 22nd. He tells cops, yeah, she's sleeping with the fishes, but nope, she was buried in their backyard. Next national news item that I saw was that, we forget it. We talk so much these days about DNA. One thing we don't talk about, it seems too much anymore, fingerprints. And we see all these old crimes, unsolved crimes being solved from like the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, well before DNA evidence became a thing. So it's not often that you hear about a case that gets solved because of fingerprints after 30 years. Well, that's exactly what happened. There was a mob hitman linked to a murder from 30 years ago that happened in Bristol, Massachusetts. Howard Farini was murdered. He was found in the trunk of his car. He'd been shot or maybe assaulted, skull bashed in, and asphyxiated with a plastic bag. And he's found in the trunk of his car at Boston's Logan Airport in 1991. Well, just recently, using new techniques for fingerprints, they were able to determine that one of his killers was this guy, Kevin Hanrahan. That his fingerprint was in the trunk of the car and was on that plastic bag or something. But it also turns out that Kevin Hanrahan, he himself was murdered the next year in 1992. So we hear so much about DNA, solving this crime from 1983 and this crime from 1974 and this rape from 1981. Well, here we have one, a murder that's 30 years old, and it gets solved by a fingerprint. It's like taking us back. So I saw that caught my eye. And Linda, I'm so impressed with your dedication. Thank you, Linda. You're very kind. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right, Screaming. Have a great night. And then finally, just in the news section, and this was a news item that my assistant Sheree brought to my attention. Kelsey Schelling disappeared in 2013, and the prosecutor there put her boyfriend Dante Lucas on trial for her murder, even though to this day her remains have not been found. Dante was Kelsey's girlfriend, and I don't know all of the specifics of the case, but it's a no-body case. There's no DNA, nothing. But a jury convicted Dante Lucas for the murder of Kelsey Schelling, even though her remains have not been found and there's no blood or anything else. The jury still believed that Dante Lucas killed her. Of course, the problem is that also Dante, it seems, has not told anyone where Kelsey is, which is unfortunate. So it can happen. It does happen. We just wish that more prosecutors would take a few more chances. And we also wish there was a way that these people who are convicted, that they would come forward and just say, yeah, her remains are here. We wish that would happen, but we know that most of the time it does not. And that sucks. So maybe those are some news items that you'd like to check out for yourself. They were ones that either caught my eye or one of my assistants' eyes, and I thought that I would talk about them on the live show. Tisha says she was pregnant and he didn't want the baby. Yeah, I think I did remember reading that as well, Tisha. That makes a lot of sense. So we're almost here to the end, and I just want to remind all of you once again, if you will give this video a thumbs up as you are watching, it helps us with the YouTube algorithms. Let's answer Jill's question, and then we will move on to this Friday's disappearance. Jill asked me, what demographic of missing person needs more exposure? Jill, you always ask the good, tough questions. I think that after 4.5 years, I think that we can say with a lot of confidence that the people who go missing, who are the most in need, I'm not going to say all of them, are the people that need more exposure. It's obvious that a lot of these disappearances, the reason they are still unsolved is because the police didn't take addicts, homeless people, those groups, those types of groups, people who are struggling, made bad choices, prostitutes, that particular demographic needs more coverage. And vulnerable populations, thank you, Jill. They do. If they were to get more exposure, if these kinds of disappearances got just 10% more attention, I think that the number of disappearances that happen would be less. Because these people make up, even though they may be a minority of the overall population, they make up a majority of the missing persons cases. And so if you really want to, bring down the number of unsolved missing persons cases, if you really want to make a dent in those crazy numbers regarding missing persons cases, this would be the way to do it, is to focus on these particular groups and learn more about why these people go missing and how they remain missing. And the way you do that is you look at those cases for people like this that were actually solved. Where were they found? Were they murdered? Did they overdose? Were they found in a trash bin? Were they found buried? Were they found in a motel room? And start collecting these statistics. And if somebody did that, I think that the investigation for these types of people and their disappearances would be easier to do. It's always going to be difficult. There's nothing that's ever going to change the fact that this is always going to be difficult. The only thing that's going to change that is if we all get GPSs, injected into our blood or something like that. That's the only way it's going to become easy. Otherwise, it's always going to be difficult. But to make it less difficult, we need to know more about why these people go missing. And then look at the cases that are solved, whether by luck or by an investigation, and find out why that happened. Can we start to make theories from this, so the next time it happens, use those theories to then investigate this new disappearance of somebody in one of those vulnerable segments of our population? That's my answer, Jill. The other issue is that for people who are not in these vulnerable segments of our population, it's much more unpredictable that those types of people who are going to go missing, people who don't have addictions, women who aren't working the streets, women, men or women who have made bad choices and have vices and everything else. For people who don't have that going on in their lives, they could still disappear, but it's much less likely. And if they do disappear, it's, those disappearances tend to be more unique. Whereas I think what we can say after 4.5 years of disappearances is that a lot of these disappearances regarding people who are into drugs or high-risk lifestyles and everything, they all kind of feel the same. They are not, even though they may be unique individuals, The generalities of their disappearances are very similar. But because of that, they should be easier to understand. Thus, they should be easier to solve. That's the way I look at it. So there's your answer, Jill, for that. So Twinkle says Jill asks the best question. She does. She's going for a repeat. Best question asker for 2021. She is going for that. Spicy says every missing human being should be taken into consideration. May be more difficult to find the vulnerable population when their behavior leads to sketchy conditions. Spicy, it almost as if the police conclude that they got what they deserved and don't want to waste time and resources looking for them. Spicy, that's certainly true. No police officer is ever going to admit that. And I'm not here to give them a hard time. And I understand that police officers are human just like the rest of us. And we make a lot of inferences and we cut corners in our lives and everything else. But I also know that it's obvious, and that they say that they don't. It comes back to that saying, "Thou doth think you protest too much." In fact, that they protest that they don't do that actually makes it look like they do. So, yeah. Let's move on to this Friday's disappearance. We are going to cover the disappearance of a young child, something we don't normally do on Unfound for many reasons I've talked about before. But this is a unique situation in that we're covering the disappearance of Nyling K. Marshall. She disappeared from Clancy, Montana on June 25th, 1983. The reason that it is unique is because I'm having my friend back on the program for the third time, Heather Grotman, from the lostandfoundblogs.com website. She does great work there. You should go to that website and read everything that she's ever written. And so, because she is a blogger, is not the parent or a family member of Nyleen, I think we are getting, and I'm not here to say that Nyleen's parents caused her disappearance. In fact, I don't believe that at all. But in these types of child disappearances, it's good to have a very, very objective observer, and that's certainly what Heather is. The circumstances of Nyleen's disappearance is that she and her family were at a get-together near or in a national park in Montana. Adults were doing what they do, socializing. The kids were, as some articles said, playing with frogs, running around, going, looking at beaver dams, and somehow Nyleen went missing. She got separated from the kids and something happened. After the fact, the children said that there was a man in a purple jogging suit that was talking to Nyleen, and there was an allegation maybe that this guy lured her away. But over the following days, at least 2,800 people were involved in searching the area. No signs of Nyleen was found. So, and this episode, the title of it is From the Mouths of Babes, because so much of this disappearance depends on the testimony of children and what they say they saw regarding this jogging suit and this man in this jogging suit. Do we choose to believe them? Or are they making stuff up just like children do sometimes? That'll be up for you to decide. What we know, though, is huge searches were done. Nothing was found. You should also know that a couple years after Nyleen went missing, her family, the police, other organizations started getting letters from someone in Wisconsin claiming that he abducted Nyleen and was going to raise her and made it sound like Nyleen was living the best life ever. It will be up to you to determine whether this guy or this person is actually telling the truth. And if he is, was he the one that was there in the purple jogging suit that day, or was this just some kook making all of it up? This is a disappearance that was covered on Unsolved Mysteries, I think Heather said back in 1991. If you remember, Heather was first on Unfound back in 2019 for the disappearance of Dale Kerstetter, a disappearance that had to do with the theft of platinum from a glass plant in Pennsylvania. And then she was on Unfound about a year ago to talk about the disappearance of Christy Nichols. So this will be her third appearance. And we had a great discussion. We did the interview last night. I like Heather a lot. So you can be looking into that. Actually, Nyleen even has her own Wikipedia page if you'd like to look at that. So that's about it. Let's see what some of the Jill says, we must take into consideration what brings us to the vulnerable population, what makes them isolate from typical society and able to segregate the variable. Tisha, I heard that someone said they had noticed him taking her cause I think it was the only she was out. I think it was the only was out. I don't know what that means, Tisha. Marlene, I am back. My dad called. My family lives in California. You mentioned your other interviews when you started. Your interview with Brandy Wells, Mom Ellen Tent, was excellent. Yeah, I like Ellen a lot. She did a great job. She's an excellent spokesperson for her missing daughter, for sure. Beauty says, sounds like a scene right from the film The Shack. So very sad. I don't know that movie, Beauty. Cherie's getting out of here. Keep your head on a swivel. Okay, yes, let's get out of here. It's been 2 hours. Great show tonight. Talked about my tournament this past weekend. Talked about the tournament this weekend. Talked about the conversation I had with my building manager. Let me show you the shirt one more time. Come on, Ed. Come on, Ed. Pressure, pressure, pressure. There you go right there. Is that the coolest shirt ever? Of course it is. Talked about the Stephanie Hartwell poll. Talked with a TV producer. Road trip to Plant City. Linda Stoltzfoos. Discussion group rules. Unfound got mentioned by Stephanie Harlow's program. Aaron Stoner in his interview with Jordan Circle. Tom Brown Grand Jury, the new project that we started. Talked some news items. Took a bunch of great questions. And then this talked about this Friday's episode. So that's all I got. Man, that was 2 hours. Went fast. I am parched. I need something to drink. And yes, Tisha, when the guy in the purple suit took her, I thought there was only one way, so I think somebody was seeing it. Maybe, Tisha. You can hear the interview on Friday, and then we can all talk about it. Good night, everyone. Thank you for the all of the accolades that you continue to give myself and my assistants and the program. I'm glad that you find Unfound informative. And we will continue to work hard for all of you and the families. Good night.